and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick, and this has officially become one of my favorite traditions that we started. Can it be called a tradition if it's just the second year that you're doing it? But this is, wait for it, drum roll. Kirby, you don't have to worry about editing in a drum roll there. I know you're overworked and overstressed. Anyways, drum roll. Best of. Okay, so this year, because we did a full-blown year, we're actually going to have two separate episodes for the best of. And oh my gosh, you know, I always get excited about these because I think like I'm going to have the week off, but I don't. Kirby doesn't give me the week off. I have to like record all the like background stuff and like do all that jazz, but also selecting them are really, really, really hard. One, because I don't like listening to myself for an hour, because I go back and forth between shame and just like, oh yeah, that was a good point. And then like, I just listen to myself ramble about the point for the next 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God, you made your point. Shut up, woman. But it is fun listening to my guests. So how we go about picking the episodes for this is kind of a combination of, you know, which episodes had the most downloads, which episodes were shared the most, which episodes had you tagging us and you screenshotting and sharing the most, like which ones just really got the most feedback from people, having people message us saying like, thank you so much. So that is kind of the filter we used for these. But for any of my guests who didn't make it on this year, like, oh, I'm sorry. I wish I could devote the first 2 months of the year to replaying the best episodes from the previous year. But then, I mean, I think you could see like that would get out of hand quickly. So anyways, before we jump in, you know, it is the beginning of January, and I just have to comment on something hilarious that has been a trend for me already this year. And you're like, for God's sake, Lauryn, it's a week and a half. Yeah, I've noticed a trend. Okay, people, I'm a quick learner. Get on board. So the trend is that there's this idea of picking a word, right? I don't know when we started doing this, but I don't feel like 5 years ago I felt the pressure to pick a word. But in the last couple of years, I don't remember what my word was last year. I could probably go back on my Instagram. I'm sure I wrote about it. You're welcome. But this year, my word was going to be stillness. I think I talked about it on last week's podcast, how like I feel that as an Enneagram 3, I just need to like learn to be a little less of a workaholic this year and not constantly be moving and doing things. Well, apparently the universe picked a different word for me. And it's funny because I think it's funny that we think we get to pick what our lesson is going to be for the year, right? Because when we're picking a word, that's what we're doing, is we're picking an area that we want to evolve and grow deeper in. So, you know, maybe it's like connection or service or joy, but basically we're looking to that to be our lesson and what we're going to focus our work on. And we should know by now that we don't have that much control. So 2021 has already told me, yeah, maybe later I can work on stillness, but at least for the first month, I'm going to be working on dealing with rejection from others. Seriously, I can't go into it. We're going to have a whole episode, I promise. But basically from New Year's Eve day, I have had just the weirdest few stories of patients like straight up like rejecting me. Like people I really cared about and I thought like had a good relationship with, just like going behind my back to like go to a different chiropractor and lie to me. And I'm like, what is happening? I had a patient earlier or like towards the end of 2020, but like months ago that, you know, didn't love how we went to an open concept. Again, this is a friend and patient that I've known for a long time. just straight up call and quit care because she didn't like our new office. And it hurt. And, I thought I got over it. But then the first week of New Year's, I am forced sitting next to her during a pedicure. And I'm like, oh my God, I am so uncomfortable. So it's just really funny. The universe is just like, no, we're going to get to the root of this one, Lauryn. You are going to start learning these lessons of not pleasing everybody, because that's the root of having a hard time with rejection, right? Is that you weren't able to please everyone. Well, at least for me, that, when it comes from patients, if you get your heart broken, well, no, that's the same thing. You get your heart broken, you feel rejected and you feel bad because you couldn't get that person to love you. Whew, this is going dark. Didn't mean it. Sorry, guys. Anyways, I thought it was kind of comical. That's the moral of the story, is that, well, shit, I guess stillness isn't my word. I guess rejection is the lesson I'm going to learn, and here we go. So before we get in, let's do a listener highlight. So this is from Nugent, and it says, can't get any more real than Dr. Lauryn. Love the practical, no-nonsense approach Dr. Lauryn has to so many of life's everyday situations, from family, work, business, and more. Not a DC, but an entrepreneur starting my own business, and find I get so much insight from my visits with her. Can't wait to hear all she has to say every week. Thank you. I appreciate those reviews a ton. One, we read them at the beginning of every episode, so it's difficult when I don't have a new one. So yeah, thanks for that. It gives me something to actually say during an episode, but also it just fills my little heart with joy. So can this be a request? If you have been a listener to the She Slices the Day podcast for a while, and you have not taken a couple minutes to just jot down 1, 2, 3 sentences, it doesn't even need to be formally in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. You could just send me a DM. I would really appreciate it. It would just make me happy. So, if you don't want to, that's okay. I've said in the past, all y'all listening who would if you had to read a review or write a review, you'd write a 3-star review. I appreciate you not. You know what? You just go on, just keep getting the podcast for free and tuning in, and you just keep your opinion to yourself. Just kidding. Okay, let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here connecting with the people listening. Thank you for bringing us all together in this weird way. Did you anticipate podcasts? What day was that? And the 7-day thing that you were and then podcasts will be a thing. But they allow us to connect to humans in a new way. And I think there's so much beauty in that weird kind of connection. Also, thank you for each and every person that took time out of their life to be on this podcast, to have the impact and connect with all these people listening. Be with them, bless them in their year going forward, help them continue to find places for their really important message to be shared, not just within chiropractic, but across the world, because so many of the speakers that I am blessed to talk to, so many of the people that I have on the show, they have such amazing messages and people need to hear it. So be with them, continue to help them spread their message. In your name we pray, amen. Okay, so we've got 4 clips that you're going to be hearing in this part 1 of the best of. The very first one, they're not in chronological order, okay? We had a whole debate, do we go in chronological order? Do we do it this way? We decided they're not in chronological order, but we went more with flow and energy and a listener experience. So this first one is episode 44, and this is our COVID roundtable. Gosh, this was such a great episode. Go back and listen to the entire episode. This is one of the most impactful episodes that was on the entire podcast, I believe. So it's Dr. Denisa Weber, Dr. Christy Wick, Dr. Nona Javid, Dr. Tamara McIntyre, and Dr. Devin Vrana. And basically, this was when COVID hit in, like, the pandemic really took off in March. And so many people, you remember March, when that was happening. We just had a lot of people within our profession looking to other leaders in our profession and being like, what should I be doing? What should I be feeling about all of this? Like, and I wanted to provide a space for some of the most impactful leaders that I know and have access to. I wanted to, like, essentially have like this bonfire experience of, like, if we had all these women just sitting around a bonfire and we were freaking talking about what is going on in the world, where are we going, what's going to happen in 2020, what would that conversation look like? So, like I said, if that doesn't pique your interest to go back to episode 44 and listen, then for sure this clip will. So this is starting with Dr. Devin. Each of these clips, we jump right in. So this is starting with Dr. Devin and talking about expectations and boundaries. And then Dr. Tamara builds off it. Oh, it's a good one. All right, enjoy. Keeping away.
I have terrible boundaries. And yet this shake was like, girl, you better get your shit together. And it's the awareness that a lot of people do depend on me. I have 5 kids. So even if I don't go past that circle, like, we about pass the 10-person limit just within the walls of our home. So, it's been interesting, and so again, it's like, what am I choosing to do? So my morning routine is essential right now. It is feed my body, feed my heart, feed my mind before I feed anyone else. And it's unbreakable to me right now, whether that, perfect world, I get an hour. This morning I got 20 minutes. And so it's like, whatever that means. Yesterday was gorgeous, so I could go outside and I could go for a run. And this morning it was 25 degrees and I ain't going out there in that. And so it was tea in my office, just looking out at the clouds, and so I love at a Tony Robbins seminar. And now I think it serves me more than ever. And I hope whoever hears this, that it was speaking to you, or why I feel the need to share it. Jim Rohn told Tony Robbins, you must stand guard at the door of your mind. And now more than ever. And so I believe that part of why I can feel this internal peace is because for a decade, chiropractic has trained me. Above, down, inside out. I'm rock solid in my principle and the way the body works. I'm rock solid in trust that if a bone is broken, I don't fix it. And we got a broken bone right now. And so I can't rush that process. I can't fix that process. And so what I can do for my people is go, sometimes when things are broke, all processes take time, but healing always happens. Always. And if we scratch out, if we piss it off, it's just going to take longer. So if we give the healing to where it comes from, which is source, whatever that means to you, then it's easier to pause and just breathe and do what you can do, which is love the people closest to you. Boundary wise, I put a circle around my girls. So they had lunch on Tuesday and I said, I need you to give me your top 10 fears. Send them to me because you're human and you haven't had all the training I've had. And so who can I help? I can help the people closest to me. They text me their 10 fears. Me and my sister hit record on our phone and we spoke life and hope and uncertainty and some of them into what, this is how we feel it. This is what our training, this is how I hear that. This is now go share that with your family if you want to, because they're scared for their parents. They're scared for these things. And so I can't fix it, but I can promise them I'm not going anywhere and I'm going to walk beside them. And that's a way I can set boundaries because I just sent a circle of love around my people. Last thing I would say is I'm being very choosy about who I engage with. Right. And so, yes, I'm on the phone at midnight with my girl, Denisa, over a cup of and yes, we're in tears and in laughter. I'm not going to do that with everybody. I can't do that with everybody. And so it's who pours life into me? I'm standing guard at the door of my heart and mind right now. Who's my army? Well, let me look around. Who do I trust? And some days that's just me and God. And social media wise, I mean, I love what Gary Vee says. I don't think social media is bad. I don't think media is bad. I think it amplifies who we already were. So if it amplifies your fear, then get off of it and restabilize your system. I just watch. I'm in observation mode. So I'm consuming a lot because I do want to know where the world's at, but I'm maintaining my internal state. And so boundaries for me are all about the ground wire.
Yep. Dr. Tamara, you were nodding and shaking your head. Did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, sort of two things to just, that Devin hit on. One, we all have different boundaries and limits to our boundaries. And I think this is, it's the conversation I have a lot of times with young doctors is, do you know who you are when you show up? And do you know where your hooks are? Because that whole sort of idea that 20% of our practice takes 80% of our energy. The only reason that happens is when you don't know what the hook or what your what boundaries being crossed that you don't know. And so this is a really interesting time to reflect on where exactly is it that we become weakened? Where's the edge of our comfort? And this is really a time to reflect on that. And especially in our roles as chiropractors, because we are leaders, people are looking to us. And so, for me as a chiropractor, the other piece of this is, I function from a place where I'm not the healer, I'm a facilitator. Yep. And so in that model, what it also means is that I don't cure, I facilitate healing. And so, what happens sometimes in that energy sucking exchange is people are coming to us asking for us to cure this problem. And it's the same dialogue, that we have when somebody comes and has pain and is asking for an exchange. They're coming to us out of a world where there's a lot of uncertainty, but they're thinking there's going to be one simple answer. You're going to be able to actually give them the cure to what's happening in the world. And the reality is that it's, the lesson I would say that I offer is that healing is a responsibility, an individual responsibility, but it's also our individual birthright. And so if you can see the gift in that, and if you can recognize that this is a time to reflect on where we are and recognize that our role that we've chosen had a different way that we did that exchange within the context of chiropractic and the exchange of the adjustment. I'm not in that world right now. But what I would tell you is that I'm in that role of facilitating healing. And it's just happening at a different level and a different level of conversation. But so boundaries and healing for me are intimately connected. And I think this is a time to really hone and identify where is that boundary for you and be totally okay with whatever that is, but just call it. Yeah. Just call it what it is, own it, take it on, and recognize that you are responsible for creating that environment that gives to you, not, takes of you.
All right. So powerful, right? I told you, go back and listen to that entire episode. I wish that we could have just had every single one of the people, because every single doctor that was in that round table contributed so much. But then the entire episode would have just been replaying the episode. Oh, again, you guys, this is a hard episode to pick. As a people pleaser, can we just connect the dots here from where I started? My goal of the year is to deal with rejection, and that has to not be pleasing everyone. Oh, anyways. So next episode is number 71, and this is Dr. Rebecca Risk on, and this is actually her, is it a cameo? Is that when somebody comes encore? I think it's an encore is what the word I'm looking for. This is actually her second episode that we had her on. Initially just talking about Instagram. In this one, we're digging a little deeper. Over the course of 2020, we definitely dug a little deeper into social media and Instagram specifically. And this one is her talking about Instagram stories. That episode was awesome. She basically teaches you how to use stories, how to balance education versus being entertaining, and really encourages you how to show up consistently. That was my big takeaway from the episode was, oh my gosh, every day. I'm every day. If you listen to the episode, I go back. I'm do I have to do it every day? She was every day. I'm shit. Anyways, but just how to show up as yourself, because that is what people are looking for in your stories, is seeing that there's a real human behind the camera that has their own unique personality and drive. So this is episode 71 on Instagram Stories with Dr. Rebecca. So I'm a chiropractor, and let's say that I have my personal chiropractic Instagram page. What do I have to be educating all the time on that? Because you said it's more about personality. So like, how do I know what to post on there? Like, yeah. Like what's the fine line between, because like, obviously I'm not going to show like Instagram stories of me twerking in the club. I can do that.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
So like, but does it have to be like, I only eat organic, and like, do I have to be constantly educating? Where's the line on this is who I am as a real person, but there's also purpose behind what I'm showing?
Okay, so I really use my feed to educate and truly expose who I am as a chiropractor and as a doctor.
Okay.
But when it comes to stories, you want to connect on a human to human level. Okay. Because like I said, you're not just buying the product, but you're buying the person behind the product. So for example, if you're a chiropractor and you're showing your adjustments and educating on posture and things like that, that's fine and dandy, but people want to see who's behind the adjustment, who's behind, like, what kind of person are they? Do they care? Are they empathetic? Are they a real like human? And that's what people buy, because yes, they see, okay, yeah, she adjusts really well. Not that they would really know off of the video, but she does these treatments that I'm interested in. But I'm also really in love with the person that she is, right? And then those two together make the sale. Really promote you in a way that it wouldn't otherwise. So for example, if you're doing like a Google search, or if you're doing, you're going on LinkedIn or whatever the case may be, people are buying and people are want to be able to relate to you. And it's just, the times have changed, I think. And I think that also you have to remain professional, but also not be afraid to show who you are, type of thing.
Yeah.
For example, there was a whole movement about how doctors and nurses and all this stuff can't be wearing bikinis and posting in like, sexy dresses and things like that. But that's what people relate to. That's what people really love about all of that. So, and that's one of the main feedback that I get from patients who are from Instagram and just my following, is that like, we really see you as a person. Like you seem to really care. And yes, they may have got that through my feed and my caption and my post, maybe, but I think where they really got that is from the stories.
Okie dokie, we are cruising along here. So this next episode blew up. Partially, it was one of those episodes, it's episode 77 with Megan Landris, and she's a student loan expert. So she's not a chiropractor, but I had her scheduled to record sometime in October, I believe, and wasn't really planning on her episode releasing until for 2 months. And after I got off the episode, I was like, I told Kirby, I said, budge her to the front. Like, people need this information on student loans and they need it as soon as possible. Now, I will give a little precursor. If you go back and listen, if you haven't listened to episode 77, WTF, guys, come on. Some of the information in the episode, I think, is no longer relevant, only a small percentage, because the student loan thing, like of what changes with now that we're in 2021. But the meat and potatoes of the episode was how to approach the entirety of your student loans, not just what to do in 2020. So go back, listen. She is an expert, and she doesn't just talk ethereal. She walks us through multiple, very detailed examples that were kind of mind-blowing, truly mind-blowing, gave me the hot sweats at certain points. But but you couldn't lie with like the data of like, oh yeah, this is absolutely the smartest way to approach student loans. How do people not know this? So without further ado, episode number 77 with student loan expert Megan Landris.
Because I think you should take your debt one of two directions and only one of two directions. I think if you go anywhere in the middle, you pay way more than you need to. I think you should either take the really aggressive route, pay it down as soon as possible, reduce that cost over time. Or I think you should be really passive. Pay as little as possible, maximize how much we get forgiven, but also do something productive with that extra cash flow. Put that towards savings, put that towards your financial future. That can really help you get ahead.
Because I think middle ground is the dangerous part. And I'm remembering as you're talking about this of like, oh yeah, that's right. That's why we went hard at it, because a couple of years into practice, we were doing well. And my husband, little calculator, went like, we're going to pay this off to like, if we just made the same amount of money, didn't get poor, make less money, but it didn't even make more money. If we just made the same amount of money, we would pay off your student loans in 23 years. So we would miss the forgiveness. Like nothing would have gotten forgiven, and we would have paid a lot, because our income-based repayment thing was like going with our income. So it's for these people, these chiropractors that like start to like in the beginning, you're like, I'm not making much. Then you would recommend going with like, be passive, pay the minimum amount, any extra money you have, don't throw it at your loans, put that in investments and things like that, pay off your house, yada, yada. If you're like killing it, then go balls to the wall. But like the middle ground is where you're like, oh, I'm making $120,000 a year and my debt is $180,000. That's where people are probably going to get like, need to talk to somebody like you and go like, all right, what are you going to do here? Because that's where you probably get screwed.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people who are kind of in that middle ground, it is a lifestyle decision at that point. Like, we have to be okay with having a longer payment trajectory if you want to not prioritize the loans. But, I think, and so I was just kind of running some numbers here. So let's say we have, let's use the average, the 250 for the student loan balance. Let's use the average income for a chiropractor of 80,000, and let's kind of see what that does over time. So, for the 25-year plan, so revised pay as you earn is a 25-year payoff schedule or maximum repayment schedule.
Is that one of the four you said, how there's like four of them?
Yes, there's four. So repay, most folks should have access to, even if you borrowed like really early on. But based on that trajectory, if your income grew at a regular, maybe 3% growth rate over time from the 80,000, based on your payment trajectory, you would pay about $213 on a debt that you started at $250 on. And the remaining balance, once you hit that 25-year time frame, would be $355. So the balance would grow. And this is another thing that people have to kind of wrap their heads around.
You're at like, oh my God. So then so $355,000 would get forgiven in that.
$355 would get forgiven.
You only paid $213 in. Your balance grew. So you're pretty much just paying interest.
Yeah.
But then you pay taxes on the $350.
Yep. So the $355. So let's say the tax code.
Makes me so uncomfortable.
Well, let me make you feel better.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, and you mentioned, there's so student loans are a hot topic in Congress right now. And for years, they've been talking about potentially eliminating this tax implication. And so let's say that's the case. Let's say they do away with taxes that are owed on a forgiven income-driven payment trajectory, then you walked away only paying $213 on a debt that you owed $250 on. So that's where you win. But also the other side of the coin, so the taxes off of $355, estimated worst case scenario, you'd owe about $142 in that year.
Wait, like $142,000?
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
Because they would act as if you made that 355 as income, and you'd have to pay
Oh,
income taxes on it.
shit. Yeah, so you got to start planning for that too.
Yes. And so, and that sounds horrifying.
It sounds really horrifying, Megan. Like, I don't
Let me
usually
break
drop
apart the
F-bombs
math.
on the thing, and I'm like in a cold sweat over here. I don't even have student loan debt, and I'm like, oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. But let me break it down to where people on the call, people listening in aren't having cold sweats after this either. But so, that brings our total cost. So if we add how much we pay towards the student loans and how much we pay towards taxes, that's about almost exactly how much we got forgiven, $355. And so what that looks like from, if we had to save for the tax implication, when we break apart the math to figure out how much we'd have to have just, building up in that, if we were investing it, we'd have to save about $260 a month in addition to our student loan payment, which is based off of income. And so that payment would be about $500 based off of these numbers we're talking about. And so from a total, like how much you have going towards your student loan situation, it would be about, call it $700 to $800 a month. Now this total cost of $355 is actually pretty darn close to the total cost of if you tried to pay this all off in 10 years. So what I mean by that is if you decided to take the really aggressive route, squish the payments into 10 years, throw $2,800 towards it, because that's what it would take based off of this balance, you would pay $345. Your total cost would be $345 compared to $355 with the payments over the 25-year time frame, savings for the tax implication that might not be around. And so that's where like we have the conversation on lifestyle. It's, it's close to the same cost, but do you really want to soak up $2,800 a month going towards this debt for the next 10 years where, that could be going towards other things that are productive?
Okay, and wasn't that good? Yeah, I know, I told you. So this last one was kind of a funny idea that I had for an episode. It happened because it was May of 2020 and, COVID's happening and Frozen 2 had released early, okay? Because the world needed consoling and Disney's solution was, we will do an early release of Frozen 2. Now, if you haven't watched Frozen, the Frozen series, Frozen 1 or Frozen 2, I don't understand you. They're fantastic movies. You can't tell me that you have a better movie to watch right now than either of those. What I will say is people's initial reaction is when they watched Frozen 2 was, I liked the first one better. That was my reaction as well until it came out on video and I was forced to watch it on average 4.5 times a week. And then you really start to see the intense beauty behind the writing. COVID 2, oh shit, guys. Frozen 2 it's kind of deep. And so in this episode 53, is 6 of my favorite Frozen 2 quotes and how they apply to the anxious life of early pandemic. I kind of want to go back and re-listen to this entire episode because it's all pretty damn relevant. So go back. Oh, you know what? Before I jump you in to episode 53, I want to do a reprise of this idea. So there was a new movie that was released on Christmas by Disney called Soul. And that one is not so hidden, the philosophy. It's pretty in your face that whoa, this has some deep philosophy. I think I literally said to Kirby, do you think that the writers of Soul read every book from Buddhism to the Bible to the untethered soul to a journey, a soul's journey, and then got really stoned and wrote this movie? So it's fantastic, But I think we're going to Kirby and I are going to watch it and pick our favorite quotes and do like a reprise of this episode just on the movie Soul, because there are some gems in there that need to be picked apart and applied to our current life. Okay, so this is episode 53. It's a solo of just me going through my 6 favorite Frozen quotes, but you're just going to hear about one of them. All right, here you go. So number 1 is a quote by Elsa and Anna's mom, and it's in the very first song of the entire movie, and it is, "When all is lost, all is found." Okay, so this is such a profound thing that we're so going through. What I want to start by saying is that we have to realize that so many of us talk about self-growth and self-care and all of this stuff, and whether it's personal growth or professional growth or like growth in the gym, whatever the gains may be, it must be forced upon us. So let's talk about something very small, such as gains in the gym. In order to lose weight, build muscle, you have to push yourself way past a place that like you should want to. Like, yeah, some freaks get they eventually like it, but like when you're new to the idea of exercise for gains of some sort, there's this point where you're like, I don't think that this feels good. I think I'm doing this wrong. And anybody experienced will go like, no, that's what's happening. This is where the progress happens. And a very similar thing happens in life. When you go like, this is really, really hard. If you look back, and this is a good exercise, if you look back and think of 2 or 3 moments in your life that were transformational. And they don't need to be big transformational. I mean, they can be things like that really didn't have much to do with you. Maybe your parents got divorced. Maybe you had to switch schools. And it doesn't have to be even in the last 5 years. Just when you look back at your life and you're like, whoa, that pivoted. So don't think like, what were the hardest things? Like, what were the things that pivoted you and were a part of making who you are today listening to this podcast? More than likely, they're not going to be happy, easy things. Even if you're like, well, I got accepted into chiropractic school. Yeah. And was that easy? Was organic chemistry in undergrad easy? Like, no, you had to work your butt off to get to that point. So it's a lot of times at these moments that end up transforming us into who we were truly put here to be. Because you know, listening, we were not all created to be images of Rachel Hollis. We were not all put here to be replicas of each other. Okay, so think of whatever female or male that you put on a pedestal. Good for them. That's great. I'm not against you having a mentor, but you know that you're not here to be them, right? And so the path to discovering who you were put here to be often requires stripping away all of the layers that society and we subconsciously have put on ourselves and is just blurring. It's like we can't see through all of the layers of bullshit that we've put on to see who we are supposed to be. So in order to find and get one step closer, because guess what? There's not this perfect person, this perfect idea that's on the other side. I just want to say that this is a journey, but you cannot begin to take steps forward until you lose all of that baggage, all of those layers that you're carrying with you. So once you strip that away, when we apply this to what we're going through right now, So many things have been stripped from us, our freedoms. But when you look at who you are right now, the integrity that you're showing up for your family with, okay? Like maybe you're showing up really vulnerable and you're teaching your kids how to process through grief or stress. That's uniquely you. How you are showing up in that is uniquely you. Maybe you are showing up and prioritizing your health, and you're showing your kids like that during times of stress, you're not gonna revert back and fall off the bandwagon, and that like running is really good for your mind. Like whatever it is, how you're showing up personally and professionally for the people you're leading, whether it's your roommate in college, whether it is your mother, whether it's your husband, whether it's your child, whether it's your coworker, how you're showing up right now is this stripped down version of you under pressure. And this is where we start to strike gold, and this is the good stuff. All right, so that was the final clip that is in this part 1 of the best of 2020. Go back, listen to these episodes. Even if you've listened to them before, they are all worth a re-listen because of the amount of just like heart and soul and value in each one. And I can't wait to release part 2 next week. Who's going to be on it? Do you have any guesses? Okay, there's a couple people that I like. I almost feel bad that they weren't in part 1 because but you have to wait. You have to wait until next week when we release part 2 of the best of 2020. In the meantime, like I said, feel free to write a review, take a screenshot. If one of these was your favorite episodes, I would love for you to share, say yes, this was my favorite episode. Just give me all that feedback because I love it so much. All right, She Slayers, until next week, bye.